Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another quick match from Total War Warhammer. This time around I'm playing as the dwarves against Dicaminos here and his Warriors of Chaos. Trying out a new fun little build here with dwarves, not something conventional. I will let the game run as I explain lists and why I picked what I did, because this is a fairly slow start. I chose Thorgrim as I'm deciding to do a very aggressive all-melee dwarf build, which is rare, and obviously I can't do this against most army groups, types, but I just decided to try it out against Chaos, because Chaos doesn't really run too many ranged units normally, not too much skirmishers, and I decided to risk it with the monsters. So I did choose Thorgrim as my leader. Now, given that this is a melee-heavy build, you might be wondering why that is, because Thorgrim isn't a great melee fighter, but it's actually because he does bring stand your ground. He brings the Great Book of Grudges, which is huge. That's plus 12 melee attack to infantry units nearby, and dwarves melee units don't have the best of melee attack. Definitely not something comparable to some of the other factions' close quarter specialists. Especially not because I'm making most of my army longbeards here. I'm backing up with a Thane who does have the Potion of Strength and the horn, whatever the ability that increases charge bonus for dwarves nearby when he casts it. Then I did bring two runesmiths. One does have the rune of, I do believe it's Hearth, and both have rune of Wrath and Ruin and rune of Negation. And this one over here does have, I do think it's the rune of Hearth and Home or something. The one that increases armor piercing damage by a little bit. The majority of my army frontline is Longbeards, immune to psychology, high morale, charge defense against large, which is all good. And then they're backed up by the Grumbling Guard and a unit of hammers over here. You can see boxing up to deny my opponent who's trying to poke with his gore beasts. And then the Peak Gate Guard over here, also immune to psychology and armor sundering. And finally, Dragonback Slayers over here, just to mop up any large units, just to be threaten them and scare them away a little bit. My opponent does kind of sally forward. I'm going to throw it in slow a little bit, just to go over my opponent's build where the main action starts. He did bring Sir Thoriel, the Everwatcher here. Actually, pause it. Sir Thoriel, the Everwatcher here, as his main lord, just to do some, Sir Thoriel is a problem for dwarves to deal with. He does have decent range resistance. He has the terror. He's very mobile. He has high mass. He's unbreakable, and he does improve armor piercing. He's just a very strong unit overall. And Lord of Metal, while it's not the greatest of lords, he can debuff your troops, which can be a bit of a problem. My opponent went with the front line of Chaos Marauders with great weapons, backed up by Aspiring Champions to boost their morale, some Chaos Trolls as well, armored Chaos Trolls to dish out even more damage. Then 4 units of Chaos Warriors with great weapons, a very, very, very cost-efficient unit, similar to Longbeards. And they'll definitely trade very evenly with me here. This unit of Chaos Warhounds, my opponent was probably expecting some skirmishers. I didn't bring any. I'll throw it back in play. And then an Exalted Hero over here on a Manticore, also causing terror, but that's not going to be too much of an effect here against my largely psychology immune army. My opponent does try to get a charge into the Longbeards, which doesn't really work because my Longbeards are behind these trees at the moment he charges. I counterattack with these Dragonback Slayers, so he immediately pulls back, just takes a smidge of damage. My Thane, unfortunately I popped the Potion of Strength here on the Thane, which is a total waste. Definitely not worth it. But we do now engage. I am popping Runes of Negation. I am popping, perhaps a bit prematurely given that the Chaos Warriors still aren't engaged. And I do pop the Runes of Wrath and Ruin, just to melt down these Chaos Marauders as quickly as possible, open up the way for my infantry. Definitely throwing all these runesmiths in. I got Thorgrim in here boosting the middle. The middle is going very much in my favor. My opponent countercharges with Aspiring Champions and Trolls, and he pops the Transmutation of Lead, which will drop my melee attack, maybe significantly less dangerous. These Gorbies get a huge charge in my Peak Gate Guard over here. They are immune to psychology, but they don't have resistance against charge. They don't have charge defense, so they're going to take about a quarter of their HP off before even engaging, just from getting run over by Gorbies. Over here on the right, this has become a bit of a blob. My Grumbling Guard are just holding the center here, holding against these Aspiring Champions and Trolls, while my Thane, my Dragonback Slayers, will shortly shift over here to deal with the rear charging Exalted Hero, who actually will terrify my hammers away with the rear charge. In the meantime, I'm dealing with these great warriors with great weapons. My Longbeards are not really able to win this fight, but with the hammers there, they should be okay. The Slayers are not coming in to deal with the Exalted Hero. They also have the Runesmith there to back them up. Unfortunately, the hammers, once again, they are susceptible to terror, so they will eventually break. My opponent does throw Sir Thoriel into the mix, so I actually wasn't paying attention too closely to the right flank. And I do try to tie down Sir Thoriel, deal with him with my heroes, with Thane, with Thorgrim, and all those. They do perform fairly well against Sir Thoriel because he doesn't have much armor, so even though none of these guys have armor piercing, they will do some okay damage to Sir Thoriel. In the meantime, my Peak Gate Guard have actually recovered from that initial charge. They're doing fairly well against the Chaos Warriors over here. They do definitely a stronger unit than the Chaos Warriors are. Much more expensive too, though, over double the cost. Longbeard's over here, though, dishing it out to the Chaos Warriors, just melting him down. So Thorgrim is getting a little bogged down, and shortly thereafter, I'm going to get Thorgrim, the Thane, and the Runesmith all on top of him. Plague of Rust is hitting my Longbeards. I don't think that's really worth it. My opponent has a lot of armor piercing. As you can see, my hammers are finally terror routing over. They will recover and come back. Fortunately, these Longbeards with their immunity to terror or immunity to psychology, and the Slayers and the Runesmith will all hold their ground and keep things together until the hammers can get back in with their dwarven psychology or dwarven morale bonuses. So Thorgrim gets really badly beaten up. My opponent's going to be forced to pull him back from the main fight over here. I'm pumping as much as I can on my units in Rune of Negation just to minimize the damage coming in. Like I said, Plague of Rust, my opponent pops another transmutation for lead, which will definitely debuff me hugely. When he pops the Plague of Rust, that was a bit of a waste, I think, because he has a lot of armor piercing, so it's not really going to help most of his units to shot any more damage. It's mostly just wasting Winds of Magic that would be better spent on something else. That said, Thorgrim over here is beating his way through these Chaos Warriors. They are wavering. They should shortly break. These Chaos Warriors are broken. This right flank finally, or the center finally dealt with the Grumbling Guard, but at this point it's a bit too. But the Grumbling Guard is a bit too little, too late. Now that they're getting tied down by Longbeards. Shortly after, my left flank, which is finally won, is going to swing into these guys, deal with them as a big blob. Over here, the block of infantry, the Dragonmax Slayers are almost goners. Runesmith though is still holding his own. The Longbeards are falling apart as well. They are very low on HP. But the hammers are still in there with an okay amount of HP. They're still dishing out the hurt. They should beat through these Chaos Warriors fairly effectively, especially with the Runesmith in there. My opponent does cast into Bombardment, and he finally throws his Warhounds into the mix. They do rack up some kills because my units are so badly beat up, but they're forced to flee almost immediately because they have very low morale, and my units are very effective against them. Bombardment was a bit of a waste once again because dwarves are very resistant to magic damage. Would have been better saving that for Plague of Rust. Chaos Trolls are doing pretty good work here because they're getting buffed by the Aspiring Champions, so their morale isn't immediately falling apart. But the Aspiring Champions aren't really able to dish out too much damage. These guys did break. They're actually coming back. They've only gotten 4 kills this game. I'm dropping a Rune of Wrath and Rune on this Chaos Warriors. I'm actually pull this Runesmith out to the right flank just to get closer and drop this the Rune of Wrath and Rune on these guys. I do believe that might have already happened, but I did that. Aspiring Warriors or Champions are sitting here, and by the time they push in, there's not really much for them to damage. They don't have armor piercing. They do magic damage, so that's neither of those things. 2 traits are good against dwarves. The Exalted Hero does come back. At this point, you can see this flank is largely falling apart. Hammers are down to 18 models, but they have gained a Chevron, actually. Runesmith, though, is still in okay state. The Exalted Hero does dive in, but there's still a decent pack of infantry who can beat him up. Chaos Marauders are coming back in, but they're not the greatest of infantry. The Chaos Warriors are falling apart and breaking. They're finally shattering. In here, my opponent's units are shattering. I do drop a Rune of Wrath and Rune on these Chaos Warhounds right as they charge in, which will absolutely destroy them. I drop another one, I think, on the Gorby's Chariots, which is a waste. But since they don't really take too much damage from it, they are being a fairly small unit. But I didn't have anything better to target them, just Sarthoriel. So now Sarthoriel is all alone. My opponent's army is shattered and fled. So now I'm going to surround Sarthoriel, beat him down with my heroes. My heroes are all very healthy, even though my army's not in absolute tatters. All of these guys are on very low HP, even though some have an okay amount of models left, like 17 models over here, I think, on the Longbeards. 6 on the Peak Guard, they're still around kicking. Well, 17 on these Longbeards, so an okay amount of models, but definitely very low on HP. But my heroes are over here hunting down Sarthoriel. They still have a lot of HP on them between the Thane, Thorgrim. My opponent doesn't really have a hope of cycle charging through this because even if he hits one of them, the others will hit him as Sarthoriel, and he doesn't have enough armor to resist. He does try to charge these hammers, but that does cost him his life because now he's trapped. He's going to get hit by the Longbeards and finally finished off. Unfortunately, this room just wandered off over here. He could have been back in the fight. So definitely a very close game, a very fun game. I definitely enjoyed it. Definitely enjoyed playing a different type of dwarves than just camping back with artillery and instead going all aggressive. I definitely think Thorgrim, the buffs from the heroes, especially Thorgrim and the Runesmiths, were immense here. The Runes of Negation and Thorgrim's boost to melee attack definitely helped, especially when the transmutation of lead hit and was reducing my infantry's stats for melee. Also, the Thane was definitely dishing out some damage, helping chase Sarthoriel away, because Thorgrim isn't the best of melee heroes. Definitely the worst of the 3 Dwarven Legendary Lords. Except for the fact that he's harder to push around because he's, I do believe, a large model. My Longbeards did an absolutely amazing job, though some of them did end up dying, and most of them were down to a fraction of their models. The fact that most of my army was immune to psychology was once again a huge factor. The only unit that was vulnerable to psychology we saw got shattered by the rear charge from the Exalted Hero eventually, and if that had been the case for my other units, my Grumbling Guard, for my Longbeards. If those had been replaced with, say, regular Dwarf Warriors with great weapons, and they had fled, my opponent would have probably been able to force a chain route, and force my units to break and then chase them down because his units were faster than mine, and then never allow me to recover. Because I did have a fairly small army, definitely smaller than his, so he had the potential to pursue him for days. My units definitely, though, paid for themselves. Longbeards just shot a boatload of damage. The only ones who didn't were the Grumbling Guard, but they got stuck up against the Chaos Aspiring Champions and the Trolls. There wasn't too many kills they could have racked up there. And they definitely tied him down, definitely tied down a disproportionate amount of my enemy's resources. Longbeards, these guys gained a chevron. The rest of them definitely dished out a good amount of kills. They're a very cost-effective unit, especially with these buffs. The Rune of Wrath and Ruin also helped a lot, because that melted down enemy units so that then the Longbeards could just finish them off. The Hammers and the Peak Gate Guard both dished out a lot of damage. The Hammers, like you saw, did break, but they did come back because these Longbeards and the Slayers and the Runesmith all held their positions. They didn't break and allow the Hammers to be pursued. And so my Hammers did come back in and dished out, once again, a bunch of damage, and then they did tie down Sartorial just a little bit and get him killed. Slayers dealt with the Exalted Hero. And the Peak Gate Guard, despite that initial charge absolutely destroying their HP, dropping them by about 25%, they did manage to come back swinging and absolutely destroy a lot of those Chaos Warriors, especially once they got close to Thorgrim and got those buffs. For my opponent, Sartorial is a very potent lord against dwarves because they struggle to stop him from moving around, just running amok. Unfortunately, Sartorial, the Exalted Hero, and the Chaos Warhounds all kind of suffered from the fact that I didn't have a skirmishers for them to go hunting after. So their prime targets weren't really there. And Sartorial isn't the best of melee heroes. And even Thorgrim, who's not particularly good, like I said, will do an okay job against him. And the Thanes and Runesmiths will definitely damage him quite a bit. The Exalted Hero, not bad, but once again, the terror on both of these guys and the fear on the Trolls, the fear on the Gorbies just didn't really work because almost all of my units had terror or psychological immunity. Chaos Marauders, I think they got committed a little too soon, so they didn't get to dish out quite as much damage as they could have otherwise. They also got hit by Rune of Wrath and Ruin and a lot of angry Longbeards, so they weren't going to last long anyway. I think the Aspiring Champions were a bit of a weird pick, definitely bringing two of them. Because while the leadership buff was definitely good for backing up the Trolls, Aspiring Champions don't dish out a lot of damage, especially not against Dwarves. Magic and no armor piercing is just not a good combination against a heavily armored faction like Dwarves, who also has magic resistance. So they're doing a very, very limited amount of damage there. I think one unit would have been a better choice. The Chaos Warhounds made some sense because he was probably expecting skirmishers. I just didn't bring any. The Chaos Warriors with great weapons did an absolutely amazing job. Once again, just like the Longbeard, they just didn't have as much support, I think, as Sartorial did or as my Longbeards did for dishing out damage. But the Chaos Warriors definitely did amazing work. They're a very cost-efficient unit, definitely comparable with Longbeards. They don't have that psychological immunity, but they're a bit quicker, I believe. And I do believe their baseline combat stats are a little better. Gorby's Chariot, of course, absolute monster. I had nothing to really stop it with. Dwarves don't really have that option. I couldn't shoot it down or anything. I didn't have any rangers with great weapons like my opponent scouted in the beginning. Chaos Warhounds were practically useless, but that was just unfortunate for my opponent that I didn't bring any skirmishers. Otherwise, they did have a purpose. They got a few kills. Actually, they got a lot of kills because they got that rear charge at the end against a very softened up army. But they broke incredibly quickly, didn't get much done. The Trolls, backed up by the Aspiring Champions, though, dished out a lot of hurt. Definitely hurt my army quite a bit, and a lot more than I expected. I thought these guys would break almost immediately and just rout, and I wouldn't have that problem with them. Even though I was heavily invested in melee, or did all melee. But that turned out to be completely wrong. They actually dished out a lot of hurt, definitely tore up my Grumbling Guard. Definitely, I think, probably paid for themselves. Definitely a good unit there. So anyway, good game to my opponent. I definitely appreciated the match. I thought it was a lot of fun, and definitely an interesting setup to run with the Dwarves. My heroes all survived with decent amounts of HP, which I think was another good thing. The fact that my infantry didn't break meant that his infantry, or he ended up tied down trying to slaughter the infantry, and that meant all of my heroes stayed intact, or for most part. And so by late game, it was a bunch of high HP heroes still around, and beat up squads will really struggle against that, even if they hadn't broken. But definitely appreciate my my opponent giving me a good battle here. Had lots of fun. Hope to see him again on the ladder. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like or subscribe down below. Even if you didn't, feel free to comment or critique. Tell me how I can improve my videos, what I can do better, how I can make these more enjoyable for you guys to watch, what could be more streamlined, that sort of stuff. Once again, I appreciate you all for watching. Thank you all, and Wyvern out.